Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be texturing up our model that we started in the last episode. But first, if you're an avid user of Blender and you'd like to help support development, consider donating today. And if you do a monthly donation, you'll get your name on the Wall of Heroes. Alright, onto the video. Alright, so now onto the texturing. Actually, at this point your model doesn't look very pretty, and the topology is something that probably belongs in a subreddit like r topology gore. But fear not, since we're not going to animate the ship, it doesn't matter for this tutorial. The texturing process is actually pretty straightforward and honestly won't take very long. You'll spend much longer looking for or creating your own texture maps and custom materials than you do applying them. With this in mind, we're actually going to discuss texture maps, what they are, what they do, and once we have them, how to apply them. Now this is going to be quick and dirty. It's not going to look the best, but like I said, when we render out our scenes, the most important part would be the lighting. And since this is a background element, it needs to read in loud shapes as opposed to tight-knit cohesiveness. Still though, if this is your first time texturing a model, I urge you to play around with it till you like the look of it instead of considering it a background element. Now currently you can see I'm making UV maps in the background. We're going to talk about UV maps in just a moment. All right. So, what are the different kind of maps that we're going to use? Well, first, to discuss our texture maps, we need to discuss PBR materials. PBR materials are the basis for modern texturing practices, where textures are layered on top of one another to create a unique and full material. This material can also be layered with other materials, but more on that later. Alright, so what textures make up a PBR material? Well, there are 5 main ones. You have your diffuse or your color maps, which provide the actual color of your texture to your material. Then you have your roughness maps, which can be smooth like plastic, or you can have a rough wood type material. Then you have your metallic maps, which is going to tell the computer what kind of material this is in terms of its metallic nature. You have your bump maps, which is going to inform the computer how bumpy is this material. And it's a little bit different than a displacement map, but we can talk about that later. And then we have the coup de grace. We have our normal maps. And this is basically going to inform our lighting system of how our object captures light, how our material reacts to light. Now there's other types of maps that can be used, but we're not going to be touching on them really for this video. But yeah, our PBR material is comprised of these 5 main maps. Not always, but we can talk about that more a little bit later. But anyways, like when it comes to level of detail, or LOD, you want to ensure that you're not adding too much detail to objects that are not really the main portion of your scene. You want to ensure that you're making it easy to render for yourself and not taking up too much of your PC's resources for things that people aren't really going to notice in the background. Alright, so first part of the texturing process. We need to UV unwrap our model. All the different objects that make up our model will need their own separate UV maps. And you can name them what you want. Blender defaults to UV map, which is fine for our model today, and that's what I'm going to leave it as. Before you unwrap your model though, there's a couple things we need to do first. First, we need to make sure we apply our scale, our rotation, and our location for each individual part of our model. And we need to set an offset so that our UV doesn't merge with itself. We can do that here and then click unwrap. Now, if we look in the UV section of our sidebar, we can see that the UV was in fact created, and we can look at it in the UV editor. Okay, so in order to turn our textures into PBR materials within Blender, we'll need to move over to the shading tabs. In this tab, you will see we now have some options. What we're interested in for right now is the nodes tab. In it, we can create new nodes and connect them together in order to create our PBR material with our textures. Front and center of which is the principled BSDF node. This node is what allows us to communicate to Blender how we want our material to look if we only use the basic textures, which is what we'll be doing today. Now, I've already chosen some textures that are roughly spaceship-like and should do the trick for our background model. Of course, we would want to spend more time on our PBR models if our model was a key object in our scene so that it looks good up close, but we won't need to do that today. Now you can kind of see in the background that I'm using the Node Wrangler add-on, and I'll make a video on the Node Wrangler add-on much later. You don't need to have it for this particular tutorial, but it is useful and it does come in handy. All right, so now you need to plug in your textures into the principled BSDF shader. Now your diffuse is going to go into your color node, the roughness is going to go into your roughness, metallic into metallic, specular into specular, and normal into your normal. And at this point, you've completed your basic texturing of your model. All right, I'd like to talk a little bit about emission shaders. Unlike textures, emissions isn't a map that we're going to apply to our node tree. No, we're actually going to use nodes themselves to get this effect. And instead of textures, we can utilize the power of the principled BSDF shader by simply using its integrated color system and emission system. Now, you can of course add in your own emission maps to plug into your emission control here in the principled BSDF, but we're going to stick with the basic shading options for this tutorial. All right, so I realize this is kind of a rushed tutorial, and later on down the road I'll do some more in-depth tutorials, but for now I'm just gonna get this out there, and hopefully you guys are gonna enjoy the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video, hopefully soon. Bye bye.